is the end of the year, so today we are chatting all about books that are perfect to read around the new year. This includes books that actually take place around the new year, as well as magical realism books that incorporate elements of time travel, time loops, sliding doors, what ifs, all of those themes that I feel like are perfect when we are turning the page into a new year. Starting off with the books that take place around New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. First, we have This Time Next Year by Sophie Cousens. This book follows Quinn and Minnie, who were born minutes apart on New Year's in the same hospital in London. And since then, Minnie kind of believes that her birthday is unlucky because they were born minutes apart, but Quinn was born first. So he, of course, got all the first baby born in the new year. And also, I think her name was supposed to be Quinn, and he got that. And so her birthdays, I think, have just not gone well her entire life. And on the eve of their 30th birthday, so this is New Year's Eve, they run into each other at a New Year's party. And I believe after that, their paths just kind of continue to cross. And so they have to figure out why and what they mean to each other and how they're connected and all of that. And I have been wanting to read one of Sophie Cousens' books for forever, and I feel like reading this one around the new year would be perfect. I also am pretty sure this book, along with most of her books, has little to no spice. Next, we have Dropping the Ball by Melanie Jacobson. This is a newer release that you can also find on Kindle Unlimited, and it follows our female main character, Caitlin, who is planning this big, fancy, glitzy fundraising gala on New Year's Eve. And she finds out that the architect she has to work with on the project is none other than her high school rival. And this one just sounds so fun with the glitzy, glammy kind of gala. And this one is also dual POV, which I always love, and it's also closed door. Another book that takes place around the new year is The Rewind by Allison, Winn, Scotch. This book follows Frankie and Ezra, who were old college sweethearts who broke up right before college graduation. And now they find themselves back on their college campus for their friend's wedding. It's New Year's Eve, 1999. And then the next morning, they wake up in the same bed together, but Ezra's grandmother's ring is on Frankie's finger, and they have to figure out how they got here, what happened. And I feel like the mystery element of this just adds a whole nother fun layer to this book, along with the 1999 kind of 2000 setting. And I feel like this would just be a really, really fun one. I also believe this one has very little spice. Another Kindle Unlimited New Year's book is Dance With Me on New Year's Eve by Alana Highbury. This book follows our female main character, Roxy, who works with this guy named Jeff that she can just not stand. And around the same time, she befriends this guy in an online gaming community. And I believe this is a type of You've Got Mail situation where, if you didn't know, not to spoil it, it's the same guy. And I feel like this one would just be really, really fun. This one is also closed door, and I believe also has some social anxiety representation, which, as someone who experiences some of that, I always really appreciate reading in a book. Next, we have Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. This story takes place, I believe, on the day before New Year's Eve, and basically it follows a bank robbery turned hostage situation when the bank robber takes these people at an apartment showing hostage. And it is written in tons of point of views. You get to read the police officer's point of view and the bank robbers and a bunch of the different hostages. And if you've read a Fredrik Backman book, you know that it's about a bank robbery hostage situation, and it's also not about that at all. And his writing is truly just so unique and poetic and profound, and I absolutely just love the way that he writes and the stories that he creates. And so I highly recommend this book. I feel like it would be perfect to binge on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. The story is just very captivating, and so I feel like you would just be in it and could just sit and read for hours, and I feel like that would be so perfect if you have a day off around the new year. Next, we have How to Save a Life by Eva Carter. This book follows 3 characters in 3 different point of views. So there's Carrie, there's Tim, and there's Joel. And basically on New Year's Eve, I believe 1999, Carrie and Tim are getting ready to take their entrance exams for med school. And on that night, Joel, this football player that they kind of know, collapses. He goes into cardiac arrest, and Carrie has to do CPR for like 18 minutes in order to save his life. And I think Tim is just like too stunned to help or do anything. And so after that, this story follows all 3 of their lives and how their lives kind of continue to intertwine and cross paths over 2 decades and kind of how that night has impacted them. And this book just sounds so interesting to me. I always love getting to follow characters for like decades and lots of years of their lives. And I thought it was interesting in the front of this book, it says that Eva Carter was inspired to write How to Save a Life by her own experience of giving CPR to her partner who was successfully resuscitated, which is just a crazy story. I cannot even imagine having to go through something like that. And she also dedicates the book to first responders everywhere who go towards danger to help the people who need them most. And I literally have like tears in my eyes. I just can't imagine going through that and writing this story and dedicating it to the people who throw themselves into those kind of situations every day. I just think is so sweet. And so I'm so glad I found this book at half price. If you didn't watch my Cozy Winter Day vlog, I found this book there then and picked it up, and I am so excited to read this in the next few weeks. And last, for a book that takes place around the new year, we have a book that also includes magical realism, which is our next category we're about to go into. And that is The Second Chance Year by Melissa Wiesner. You can read this book on Kindle Unlimited, and it follows our female main character, Sadie, who has lost her boyfriend, she's lost her job, she's lost her apartment, she's struggling. And she gets the opportunity to make this wish to redo the previous year of her life. And so she makes this wish and nothing really changes until she wakes up the next morning and it's January 1st of the previous year. So she gets a chance to do her whole second chance year with a new perspective. And I think this one just sounds really interesting. I love that it includes the New Year's timeline and taking place around the new year, but also includes magical realism. And I believe this one also is closed door and has very little spice. Now we are moving into our magical realism category. So we're going to start with some time travel, time loop stories. This could be traveling back to the past or traveling to the future. So first up, we have The Good Part by Sophie Cousens. This book follows Lucy, who is 26, and she's just struggling with her career, romance, just her life. And so one night there's this storm, and she takes shelter in this little shop. And inside the shop, there is this wishing machine, and she wishes that she could skip to the good part of her life. So the next day she wakes up and she has a ring on her finger, and she has kids, and she has this new important job, and she has to figure out, like, can she go back to where she was previously in time? And if so, does she want to leave this good part of her life behind? And so this is primarily, I think, more of a literary story following Lucy's story, but also has, of course, elements of romance. I believe this is low spice, pretty mild, if anything. I am so excited to read this one. This one has been on my TBR for forever, and I feel like I've kind of been putting it off because I feel like I'm going to like it so much, you know, when you want to like save something. But I'm planning to read this soon, and I am so excited to finally get to it. So next we have 5 First Chances by Sarah Jost. This is one that you can find on Kindle Unlimited, and it follows Lou, who basically is already kind of struggling in life, and then she finds out that the man that she loves got engaged to somebody else. And so she somehow is able to travel back in time to this one moment where a small decision kind of changed everything, and she finds herself in a time loop, I think, where she keeps going back to that moment. And I think in each time loop her paths cross with like one particular person. I love a time loop, and I love one of those stories where it's like, no matter what, these two people keep coming together, like they're just meant to be, and it just keeps happening. And so I feel like this one would be really fun. This one is, I believe, like no to very low spice as well. Another kind of time travel story is Begin Again by Helly, Acton. This story follows Frankie, who kind of just already feels like something is missing in her life, and then she dies in this freak kebab related accident, and she finds herself able to like make different decisions, revisit specific moments, and kind of see what could have been. This book reminds me a lot of The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. If you haven't read that one, that's also a great one to read, I feel like, around this time of year. But just the concept of being able to like revisit different moments, make a different decision, and see how that decision impacts your life. I feel like that's so interesting, and also just something that I feel like around the new year, as we make goals and think about changes we want to make, is just something that's kind of at the forefront of all of our minds. And since this book is more literary, I don't think it really has any spice. And lastly, for time travel stories, we have The Backtrack by Erin Rosa. This book follows Sam, who left her home in Tybee Island years ago to pursue her dream of being a pilot. But now her grandmother is selling the house, and she has to go back and kind of help pack up, get her things. And while she's there, she finds this CD that her best friend made for her, like back in high school. And as she starts playing it, each song shows her like a different moment in time in her past, but it shows her what could have been, not what actually happened. So I think as she's listening to the CD, she like sees all of these different moments and what could have happened. And then we kind of follow the story of what that prompts her to do in her present day life. And this one sounds so intriguing to me. I love the concept of the music being like the magic that makes the magical realism happen. And so I'm really excited to read this one. I believe this one also has like very little spice. And because this story includes flashbacks of what could have been, it kind of crosses into our next category of magical realism, which is sliding doors, alternate realities, those what if, pivotal kind of choices and moments that shape us and make us who we are. So first in this sliding doors category, we have Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book follows our female main character, Hannah. She has had all of these jobs, she's lived in all these different cities, and now after a really bad breakup, she's back in her hometown of Los Angeles. And to celebrate her first night back, her and her friend Gabby just go out to like a bar, and there she runs into her old ex-boyfriend, Ethan. And so later that night, Gabby's like, are you ready to go? You can leave with me. And then Ethan offers to like give her a ride later if she wants to stay. So she has to make this probably what seems like in the moment very simple decision of like, do I stay with Ethan? Do I go home with Gabby? And basically after that moment, she follows like two concurrent storylines of alternate realities of like what happens with going, like making each decision. And I think it's so interesting. It says, is anything meant to be? How much of our lives is determined by chance? And perhaps most compelling, is there such a thing as a soulmate? Hannah believes there is, and in both worlds, she believes she's found him. Also, I don't believe there's any spice in this book either. We also have What's in a Kiss by Lauren Kate. This one follows Jake and Liv, and Jake was Liv's like high school rival / prom date, and there was this prom kiss that just never was. And now it's like 10 years later. Liv is the maid of honor in her best friend's wedding, and of course Jake is the best man. So their paths are crossing, and right when her best friend says I do, they're making eye contact, and I think it throws them into this alternate reality where that kiss did happen, and they get to kind of see the answer to that big what if question that they've always asked. And I believe this one does have a little bit of spice, just to keep that in mind. Next, we have What Might Have Been by Holly Miller. This one follows our female main character, Lucy, who finds herself at this crossroads where she has to choose between two different guys, two different jobs, two different places to live. And so it follows two like concurrent storylines of both of those situations. So one, I think she moves back to London. She lives with her best friend. She gets this new job that she's really excited about. and the other one she stays where she is in this like seaside town, and she pursues her dream of being a writer, and there's this like artsy photographer guy, and it just follows her different stories of like what happens if she stays and if she goes. Again, I just feel like these kind of stories are so fun, and especially around the new year when I feel like we're thinking about changes we want to make in our own lives. I feel like reading stories like this and just being very reflective is so fun and just timely for the season. Also, I believe this book doesn't have any spice. And lastly, this book doesn't really have magical realism, but it still explores that theme of the small choices we make every day and how they impact our lives. So I wanted to include it, and that is Who We Are Now by Lauryn Chamberlain. So this book follows 4 different friends on the eve of their college graduation. It's 2006. And you follow all 4 of them over, I think, 15 years. And each chapter is told in a different point of view, and it's telling the story of an entire year of their lives. This concept just sounds so interesting to me. It's exploring friendships, especially in your 20s and 30s, in that post-grad kind of life. One of the blurbs on the back does say that it made her weep. So it doesn't look like a sad book from the cover, but stay tuned because maybe it will also make me weep. Also, I don't believe this one has any spice since it's technically not a romance. It's more of a literary, but I'm sure there's also romance happening in here, so just keep that in mind. And that is my New Year's TBR. Let me know what books sounded most interesting to you down in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe because there's going to be lots more wrap-ups, end of the year, and beginning of the year content to come in the next few weeks. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care, friends.